Now let's take a look at how to do final rendering. Now typically when we do a final render, we do what's called a production render. And you can get to that here by just left clicking and going to render production. But we also have another one here called render iterative. And we also have what's called active shade. Now I'm not going to press any of these, but let's take a look at active shade, which allows you to interactively render your scene. So I'm going to go into my render setup window here. And I'm going to change my mode to active shade. Now notice how over here, this also changes to active shade. And I can select my renderer, and I can go into my common parameters here. And I'm going to set these to HGTV and 480 by 270, which is the same aspect ratio as my final image. Now, once we have this set up, we can go into the art renderer. And for this, I'm actually going to set the quality to minimum because all I really want to do is just kind of get a sense for what the scene looks like. And then I'm going to press render. Now this may take a little while depending upon how fast your computer is. Now this is a very kind of blurry render because we have it at such low quality, but it's enough to kind of see the scene. Now, if we want to change something in the scene, we can. We can change things such as colors and materials and lighting and have them show up in this render. So let's do a really simple change. I'm going to go into my material editor here. And here I should have a material called lamps. If I don't have it, you can always pick material, and I'm going to select these lamps and pick that. So these are the colors of these overhead lights in the scene. So let's go ahead and go down to base color and reflections and just go ahead and change the color of those lights. And notice how when I do that, it changes in this render. Here, let me move this over here. So as I change this, notice how the render updates to reflect that. So no matter how I change this, now the renderer is actually rendering in real time as I dial in my colors. So I can kind of get a sense for what these lights look like. And once I click OK on that, it's now changed in my scene, and I've also seen a render of it. Now this is a great way to do interactive rendering. Now if your system is faster, you can certainly turn up the render quality. And different renderers will have different speeds. So if you were working with the scanline renderer, it might render a little bit faster. And now let's go ahead and do a final render. So I'm going to go into production render mode here. I'm going to go into my art render. And let's go ahead and just set our quality somewhere between medium and high. And then I'm going to do a production render. Now the hotkey for this is F9 for production render and F10 for active shade. So I'm going to hit F9 and do a production render of my scene. And here we have our final render. As you can see, when we want to render the final image, we do production render. But if we want to do interactive rendering and change things in the scene, we can use active shade.